Nation. Welcome back to the Nation's official podcast. We're your host. I am TJ Kern. That is Blake Hartsfield. Blake, been a couple weeks since we've had a pod. This is a very special pod, my friend. And first off, how you doing?
Doing well, man. Ready to get into our conversation here with Ted, and I'm excited to hear what he's got to say.
Absolutely. And for those of you that are watching the pod, you can see that we have a third gentleman joining us today. Very special guest, friend of the program, and a very special friend of mine, Ted Emrich from ESPN and Westwood One. Ted, what is up, my guy?
TJ, how's it going? Blake, great to be on with you guys. It's always fun joining you and talking Texas Tech hoops. Usually, might be a little more than that today, which is great, man. Always great to hang out with you.
Always a pleasure having you on. And man, I got to start with this because you're a busy guy. You know, normally we like to have you on during the season, and your voice is for Red Raider basketball fans in particular a familiar one, as you have worked the Big 12 for the last several years, and you've called several Red Raider basketball games. So I want to pivot. Where were you last week?
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago, I was in Augusta, Georgia for the Masters, covering it for Westwood One. Super fortunate to be there the last 10 or so years for Westwood One. And how about that? You check the top of the leaderboard. Yes, a former Longhorn and Scotty Scheffler took home the green jacket for the second time in 3 years. But the one guy right behind him on Sunday, I even tweeted the photo of it. It was crazy, right? 1-2 on the leaderboard. You had Scotty Scheffler and Ludvig Aberg, Texas Tech's own. And I mean, let me tell you, it's his first major start. I mean, forget first Masters, his first major championship start. Just process that for any golfer where at that level, you have to develop some level of scar tissue to be good, you know. And yet here comes Ludvig Aberg, and he's right there in contention in his first major. I mean, this is a guy who won twice last year, once on the PGA Tour, once on the European Tour. He's already won a Ryder Cup with Team Europe. He is mature beyond his years. And honestly, those that cover golf week in and week out aren't all that surprised that he fared so well at the Masters. It's like nothing gets to him. What would be a pressure cooker for any other golfer, it's like he doesn't feel that, or he knows how to process all of that and still play at his best. And we've seen nothing close to his best yet. That is what's so scary. He is going to be a fixture at the top of the leaderboard. He should be for many years to come at tournaments like the Masters.
Yeah, Ted, you touched on a lot there. His first major and being able to perform that well at a course in Augusta that more so even maybe some of the other majors that you got to play it a few times to kind of figure out how to, work your way around it, figure out where you can miss, where you can't. And he performs as well as he did. Obviously, he's had the rocket start to his career. Is he a kind of guy that you think is a future world number one? Obviously, Scotty is in the midst of a almost Tiger-esque level of dominance here the last 4 or 5 tournaments, but is Aberg a guy that you could see being a future world number one at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so tough. Golf has, even with the split with the Live Golf League and the great players that are on that tour now, there is a level of parity that is in golf. There is no, even with Scheffler's play over the last year plus, I mean, there is no Tiger there, and there probably never will be again. That again speaks to Scheffler's dominance, especially in this last month plus, that he's even in that conversation. But there is no intimidator like Tiger now. And so you can see, a few players maybe taking their turn at number one over the next few years, especially that next young wave that is coming. I think of a guy like Will Zalatoris coming back from back surgery and what he showed very early on, even at his first Masters and a runner up. And, I mean, he's been a runner up at three different majors. But you look at guys in that kind of age bracket, and again, Oberg, his first year, what he is doing, there's no doubt that he has number one written all over him.
Yeah, and Red Raider Nation was ablaze. And I had a good time watching him compete in his first Masters and his first major. And as Red Raider Nation likes to do, they will be supporting him going forward. So I just wanted to start the interview off there. Number one, I'm jealous. I got to get, like Blake, I think both of us said it's on our bucket list to get out there to
100%.
Augusta. Yeah, but to have a Red Raider at the top of the leaderboard, I wanted to start there. But the reason we have you on, the meat and potatoes, Texas Tech basketball, you have the privilege of calling the basketball in the best conference in the world, the Big 12. And we want to start with Coach Grant McCasland, and I'm going to let Blake start it off.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your perception. Obviously we think we hit a home run with Grant McCasland. He was the guy that I said before they hired him when he was at North Texas, when everything went down with Mark Adams, that this is the guy they needed to target. And just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on a more national perception. What was his what did people view his hire when he was brought in, and then after year one, how's the perception nationally?
I mean, I absolutely think it's a home run as well. I love the guy, and that's yeah, when you're in the position that I am, and we get a chance to get to know these coaches a little bit. Even if it's just brief conversations at shoot arounds, and sometimes those brief conversations turn into not so brief conversations. And with Grant, thankfully, he is an open book, and we know how to handle that. He trusts us. We know not to spill everything on the air with what's going on with his team at the time, but it's so much appreciated when you contrast that with some coaches who are so guarded, and you understand it. Not everyone is going to tell the entire story of their team every time you see them. But I've always respected that about Grant, even going back to when he was at UNT, which is my alma mater, and I got a chance to do some of North Texas games when McCasland was the head coach. Just again, the resume speaks for itself. When you apply it to this season, year one at Tech, I think 23 wins and a tournament berth really is incredible. I know by the end of it, I'm sure that there were some Red Raider fans, there's that tinge of disappointment. Man, where they set up to do more. Again, look at who they lost to, right? Team that goes from the 11th to the Final Four. I mean, they were one of the hottest teams in America. And so you can tell yourself that story and you can sleep easy at night. But beyond that, to inherit what he did post Mark Adams and what was a last place team in the Big 12, to go to 23 wins in the tournament, that really is remarkable. And on top of that, guys, this is a team that really was not made in Grant McCasland's image. You think of McCasland, you think of the defense that his teams at North Texas play. They, year after year, all 6 years in one category, and honestly multiple categories, you're talking about one of the elite defensive teams in the country. And that's not what they were. They weren't built for that this year at Tech, even with, again, he's putting his fingerprints on it, the transfers that they brought in. Um, they went through so much. I don't have to tell you guys, right? The flu in February, losing Devin Cambridge back in December. I mean, that changes things unequivocally. So to cater to that team and understand, you know what? This is an offensive team. This is an offensively gifted team. And the numbers in Ken Palm and their offensive efficiency metric, it played out that way. this is how we have to win. And to win 23 games, that is an incredible achievement in year one. We're all following the portal. I know they are certainly, and looking to see what the team will look like heading into next year. It's a year-to-year proposition, but I was really impressed with what he put together, what his staff put together in year one.
And one of the big keys to this last year that Blake and I talked about all over our podcast all season long, Ted, was the lack of depth. Do you think the short off season and that obviously the injury to Cambridge was big, but
Warren Washington.
do you think the short off season had something to possibly do with that?
Yeah, maybe. You see the names that did go into the portal at the end of the year. Again, check me if I'm wrong here, but the likes of Lamar Washington, DeMaurian Williams, among others, and Pop Isaacs as well, of course, who saw plenty of minutes. But some of those first guys that I mentioned that didn't have the minutes that they were probably expecting or hoping for. And again, it's always tough when you experience a coaching change midstream in your college career and you wonder, oh, is this going to be a fit? And who did he bring in? Am I the right guy for him? And obviously NIL plays a factor as well. I go back to Cambridge because you guys didn't get a chance to see him for a full season. And TJ, I know you love the guy I'm about to say, but remember 2 years ago on the Sweet 16 team, Adonis Arms. And I think Devin Cambridge would have been almost Adonis Arms plus. I truly believe that what he would have brought to the table in terms of explosiveness, in terms of timely shooting, in terms of defense, similar size, length. I saw Devin Cambridge the year before at the end of the season with Arizona State. I saw him in the first four in the NCAA tournament. And I mean, you could just tell the dude's nickname is Bounce Man, and the energy that he gives. There is an X factor quality about him. And so again, not here to make excuses or anything like that, but it's a what if. It's a what if scenario for last year. If they had had that piece to complement everything else that they had, when the flip side of it is, let's be fair to Kerwin Walton. He tried. He really tried defensively, but that is not his makeup. He's a shooter. And he did that well. He played his role. And honestly, the role that they needed him to play post Cambridge injury was probably more than even Grant McCasland expected. I think he would even tell you that. So it was a tough spot. You don't want to be beholden to just one guy and that makes or breaks your season. But it's, again, post-mortem here, it is fun to look back. Hey, what could they have been had they had a healthy Devin Cambridge in the lineup?
Yeah, and Ted, man, Warren Washington. I mean, talk about the injury front there. This team was in first place in the Big 12 at 5-1, and Warren Washington was playing amazing basketball. Then, of course, he goes down on top of Devin Cambridge there late in the year, and the team really never recovered after that. Of course, they played a tough game against NC State. The big fella DJ Burns was, doing his thing, backing down, looking like Escalade from the M1 mixtape. But man, it
only
was,
you would pull that kind of reference too. I love this.
Yeah,
he does that a lot.
Where's the professor when you need him?
Yeah,
no doubt. But I mean, that was an impressive game. And Blake and I both had Tech in the Elite Eight. I mean, we thought the bottom part of the bracket, we thought it was a good draw. And then, of course, NC State goes on their miracle run to the Final Four, almost proving Blake and I right that the winner of that game had a good chance to make a run in the tournament. When you were looking at that bracket, how far did you have Tech going?
wasn't I'll be honest, I wasn't all that hopeful because I had seen the kind of run that NC State was putting together. You know, the other side certainly is, oh, well, I mean, is this a fatigued team? 5 wins in 5 days at the ACC tournament. Maybe Tech is catching a break there. I thought, man, that's a tough draw. To have to that's the 11 seed that they have to go up against. Again, you win 23 games in the toughest conference in America, and this is what you have to deal with in the first round. That's kind of where my head was at. And just again, knowing what that team was going through by the end of the year, that, you know, Pop Isaacs, the second half of Big 12 play was starting to wear down. And again, they asked so much of him, and we certainly know what was happening off the court. Not to mention, the civil lawsuit aside, his father going through cancer treatments as well. And, seeing his dad at games and, just catching up with him and just knowing he's going through rough times. So a lot was weighing on Pop Isaacs by the end of the year. Um, you know, I, I didn't think Elite Eight thought they were capable of maybe making it to the second weekend. But I think you could have said the same about a lot of Big 12 teams, just knowing how battle tested those teams are when they get to the tournament.
Yeah, Ted, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, and as far as where we having them in the Elite Eight, I was on the side of NC State can't keep this level up. This is a team that was nowhere near this good all year long. But when a team gets hot, they get hot, and you ran into that team, so you kind of closed the page on this season. But with the new court ruling, right, with around NIL and free transfers and more or less turning college athletics, at least in football and basketball, into minor league sports now. How do you see the landscape moving forward within college athletics? Is this a model that you like? Do you not like it? And obviously, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts because it seems like there's no roster continuity anymore from year to year, and you can't team build like you used to. And like I said, for a lack of a better term, it feels more like just minor league professional sports.
I love that players have freedom, and similar freedom to what their coaches have had for so many years. And, I get that it's not apples to apples here, but, you commit to a coach and all of a sudden they leave, better opportunity, better offer. And, how can you fault that? I mean, the coach is moving up. The coach is going from a mid-major school and he's got his break and now in a major conference, whatever. Um, Grant McCasland's players at North Texas, what were they thinking when he took the job at Texas Tech? You have to look at it from both sides, and I'm glad that players not only have that freedom, they can also cash in on their name, image, and likeness. All of that said, I am hopeful moving forward, especially after the ruling that was passed down by the NCAA, that you have some more guardrails in place so that, okay, yes, freedom to transfer, not just one-time transfers, but you got to be in the portal by May 1st. Okay. No more of the last minute, right before the season or early season trying, uh, not that that was a prevalent issue, but when you're still trying to understand the framework of your team by the end of the summer, now it's like, okay, can we find some kind of middle ground here? And that's good. That's good to put deadlines in place. I would hope that the next step would be, let's wait to open that portal until after the NCAA tournament. It is absolutely ridiculous that uh, not just coaches, but players have to capitalize on this too. They have to get in there. If the portal's open, you got to get in there and find the best offer right away. But the fact that coaches and everyone has to worry about recruiting at the end of the season, and again, games are going on, um, that's an issue. I would love to see that amended moving forward. But again, overall, I like the direction of it. I get it as, we all remember, we love, the 4 year guys. We love the guys that you see them develop year to year, right? Spot minutes as a freshman, rotation guy as a sophomore, starter as a junior, all conference as a senior, right? That's cool. Like, you can invest in them, you root for them. Look how far they've come. Oh, now it's his senior night. It's special. You know, the crowd in Lubbock is off the charts as usual as you celebrate one of the all-time greats. So, like, that is cool. It's just different now. And, I'm glad that players can, take advantage of those new rules. But, I'm glad that there are some guardrails starting to be put in place.
Yeah, Blake and Ted here. We are the nation's official podcast. We do have ESPN and Westwood One's Ted Emrich on the show. Pleased to have him with us here. And Ted, I was going to touch on that since we were talking about coaches and players and the freedom to move around. I just kind of want to get your thoughts because Blake and I almost had to do a podcast about possibly searching for a new basketball coach a couple weeks ago. And all that started with SMU and all the madness that followed because SMU decided they wanted to throw some money around. It almost led to Scott Drew going to Kentucky and possibly Coach McCasland going to Baylor, his alma mater. That was wild.
Man, I don't have any intel for you. I was following it on social media just like anybody else. I did enjoy the meme of Scott Drew at Mi Casita there in Waco, and now he's got his table and he signed the table and all of that. That was good content. I enjoyed that. But yeah, with the domino effect, right? And it can happen now with players. It has happened for years with coaches. That SMU heading to the ACC wanted to make a change. I think, having done an SMU game this past year, just a random American game in the middle of the Big 12 schedule, I just really didn't understand it. I didn't think they needed to make a change. Rob Lanier winning 20 games in his second year. I thought he had it going in the right direction, but they decided, okay, they in their mind they wanted what they thought was an upgrade, and you bring in Andy Enfield, and yeah, it's a chain reaction. Um, I, I'm glad that Scott Drew stayed. Again, just and again, Texas Tech fans might think one way or another. It's funny to see what Scott Drew's staff looks like right now. With, funny enough, Alvin Brooks leaving to join Kentucky and be on Mark Pope's staff. Um, but this is one of the greatest turnarounds in college sports history, what Scott Drew has offered down there. And I like that he remained, that he is still there. Not that he wouldn't have had a tremendous amount of success at Kentucky, but I think it's good. I think it's good for the Big 12 that he remained. And yeah, for Texas Tech, you're right. Grant McCasland might have been the first call. And so it's good for Tech that Grant is still in town.
Yeah, it feels like outside of like the Blue Bloods, the only two programs where the coaches have stayed in quote unquote smaller programs and brought them up are Drew and Mark Few up at Gonzaga, which that's the other one that mind blows me that he's never been poached by a Kentucky or obviously Carolina and Duke changed coaches here recently. So it's I think it's good for college basketball. Obviously the Blue Bloods are Blue Bloods for a reason, and they're able to most of the time hire who they want to hire. But like you said, I think it's good for the Big 12. It's one of the best stories in college basketball in terms of a turnaround. And as much as I don't like admitting that as a Tech fan, he's done some great things in Waco, and his coaching tree is taken off, and he's had some successful assistants that have gone out, and obviously we've been a beneficiary of that. So was happy to see him turn the Big Blue down there.
Yeah, that definitely worked out in our favor, getting to keep Coach McCasland, who is now turning the page here into year two. But Ted, before we let you get out of here, Blake and I have had some conversations off air, okay, about the future of college athletics and where we think it's headed. And I think it's no secret that the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to be the only two boys on the block, so to speak. And it's possible that we could have some more realignment here soon. There's been talk about obviously the college football expansion playoff, but specifically to basketball, there's been talk of changing the tournament and expanding it yet again. And I'm just going to give you the floor and kind of let you, say your 2 cents about expanding the tournament or leaving it alone or the future of college basketball.
Yeah, I don't want to see it. And I've heard the case. Joe Lenardi put together, ESPN's bracketologist. We follow him every year, right, as we inch closer and closer to the tournament. He put together a solid case. I disagree with it about why the tournament should expand. Um, and part of it has to do with, again, insert cliche term here, the changing college landscape, right? And just including more of the power conference teams. And like you alluded to there, TJ, like what is a power conference now? Well, I mean, it's the SEC and the Big Ten. You might argue when it comes to football, is it just a power two? Again, obviously with basketball, the Big 12 is still right there, especially with the teams that they're adding. But I also had this conversation with Jamie Dixon of TCU late in the year, and it sounded like that he is coming to that side of expansion. And, if you are a coach in the Big 12 and you're in the middle of the pack, and again, say you're Porter Moser at Oklahoma, right, this year, and you're the first team out of the tournament. Say you are, again, that mid-major who has that sensational year, like Indiana
Indiana
State,
State.
and you've got Larry Nerd, right, in Robbie Avila, and he's a draw, and people, actually tune in to see him. NIT ratings were through the roof, comparatively speaking, and in due in large part to him and that Indiana State story. Um, just giving more bites of the apple to teams like that. Uh, I like it where it is. I on the one hand, it's like, okay, you go from arguing. Does anybody really argue about, outside of those fan bases, Oklahoma versus the last team in the field that gets sent to Dayton? Are we shifting that conversation now to team, again, 90 something and the team that is left out there? I don't know. And maybe I should look at it from the perspective of, hey, that means more tournament games and more opportunities for people like me, doing tournament games for Westwood One. It's one of the most incredible events in sports, and I'm very privileged to be a small part of it. But yes, the phrase "watered down" comes to mind, just where we might be going with that. And I get the argument from somebody like Jamie Dixon. He put it this way, like you telling me that, again, you're a 20 win team, 19, 18 win team. You go 500 or 8 and 10 in the Big 12, and you pick off a couple of ranked teams along the way, right? The resume is there, even though the overall record is iffy. You're telling me we're not better than, again, this team over here from a lesser conference, and it's just, what do you want to argue about? And I like 68. I think it's clean. I like the 8 first and second round sites. I got the mini expansion to include the first 4, get it to 68, and make that a TV event. Yeah, what if you expand it again? Hey, is it a bigger, an even bigger television contract from CBS and Turner? Yeah, probably. Absolutely. More games, for this kind of event. And again, all of us filling out our bracket, for the pool and all of that. So I know it's a rambling answer, guys. I feel like this is the forum to ramble. I think we can do that here in the nation. I would love to see it stay where it is, but it was funny this year more than ever. I've seen that argument really pop up with all the realignment talk.
I agree with you 100%. It is 68 is the right number. I was hesitant when they went from 64 to 68, but the Tuesday, Wednesday night games have been entertaining. But for me, and this is going to kind of sound selfish, the Thursday through Sunday of that first weekend is like the best sports calendar of the year, right? Like you get basketball from 11 a.m. to midnight. And to your point, there's 8 sites. You know what you're expecting. It's been that way forever. And I don't want to start seeing it seems like a lot of the games, even with more recently here, like the 116s, 215s, are getting more competitive, and all the games end up being close. And I don't want to see a bunch of blowouts in the first round, and the idea of getting more teams in the field and just watering down that product, because those first 4 days of the tournament are just there's nothing else in the year that you get as a sports fan to watch that's like that.
Yeah, right. And yeah, like that we might be again. The old heads are like, yeah, this is what we know. This is what we've grown up with, and yeah, it's. I'm with you. I love the setup. That first weekend is special. I was very fortunate to be in Indianapolis for the first and second round, and um, you know, what does it look like? What does it look like if you add 30 more teams, and now you're adding even more sites, and it just doesn't seem right. But yeah, the decision gets made far beyond us. But I would love to see it stay at 68.
Well, Ted, man, I always appreciate your time. I would have loved to have had you on during the year while you were calling some games, but hey, it worked out the way it did. We got you here on your off season, so as your calendar turns to your off season, man, enjoy the time with the family. We know you'll be ramping up for some college football calls here in the fall. Thanks for hopping on with us tonight. I know from Blake and I, we both really appreciate it every year you hopping on.
Anytime, guys. No, seriously, in season, out of season. I hope to do a game, a football game in Lubbock at some point. I've never done that, and I love Joey McGuire. I used to do some of his games when he was at Cedar Hill High School here in DFW. So I trust me, I would love to do that. Some Big 12 Now game early on in the year. That would be a lot of fun. But I'll catch up with you guys down the road for sure.
Hey, thanks again, Ted, and we'll be talking to you soon, okay?
You got it, man. See you guys.